Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Mike Conti to help you break down racing at Pimlico this weekend, the 150th running of the Preakness Stakes, race 13 on Saturday, 7:01 p.m. post time. We're going to take you through the field of 9 that will be running. Also discuss Friday's Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, talk about some undercard bets on Saturday, give you our exactas, trifectas, think about how we're building out our exotic tickets, and then get you out of here, hopefully, with some winners for this weekend. Conti, welcome back to the show. Just wanted to get your take on the Kentucky Derby. Any thoughts that you might have, considering the number 2 journalism wasn't initially going to run in here, but his connections watched him train in the week after the Derby, liked what they saw clearly because they ended up entering him in the Preakness. Ultimately, Sovereignty, your Kentucky Derby winner, not in this field. He's at Saratoga, pointing towards the Belmont. So, journalism, 8-5 on the morning line. Do you think that's a fair price? Do you think that's a short price considering he ran 2 weeks ago? I'm inclined to believe that he should be closer to even money. So what are your thoughts on journalism relative to this field? And then the pace that we have in this field. It seems like we have at least 3 pace setters who should give journalism an honest run in front of them.
Well, first, one, it's great to be back, Sean. Second, I have to say that I texted our producer, Matt Mitchell, after the Derby and said, next year, before we record, remind me to not throw out the horse that finished second in the Florida Derby, because this is the second time in the last 5 years that the horse who finished second in the Florida Derby went on to win the Kentucky Derby. Mage did it. And now we have Sovereignty. The Florida Derby has always been a key prep race. I'm kicking myself, not that I threw him out, but that I didn't have him high enough on my list to be considered a win contender. So shout out Matt Mitchell. We will make sure that next year we bring the people the number 2 finisher in the Florida Derby as a top selection in the Kentucky Derby, especially because the horse who won the Florida Derby
Yep.
was going to be my top selection in the Kentucky Derby. And when
Okay.
that horse didn't run, it should have bumped Sovereignty up on my board. Didn't. Anyway,
That
to
was the
your
Pan
question
Street,
though.
right? To Pan Street?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. To your question on journalism, look, anybody who had questions about this horse can no longer have questions about this horse. He didn't get the cleanest of trips. I think he was obviously one of the most talented horses in the field. Journalism ran a fantastic race. Can't take anything away from the way that he ran. Sovereignty just ran a better race on
Yep.
Derby Day. If you're telling me in this field though that I'm going to get 8-5 on journalism, I get excited by that price. And typically as a horse player, 8-5 doesn't get me very excited. In this instance, it would get me really excited. I'm going to be surprised if come post time he's not closer to even money, maybe even click below to 4-5.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that. If this was your Kentucky Derby field, and even if we didn't have, or if we still had the questions around journalism that we had going into the Derby, but if this was a field of 9 for the Derby, we didn't see the race that he ran 2 weeks ago, what would he have been in this race? 4-5, but instead, because he crossed the finish line second, now he's 8-5. Now, in these Triple Crown races, there's going to be horses that are overbet. Sandman, for instance, the TikTok horse is going to draw a lot of attention. Pay Billy, the local horse, going to draw a lot of attention, maybe tickets, prices to the point that he probably shouldn't be bet to. And as a result, that's just going to increase value in other horses. If you're a sports bettor, you're not a typical horse player listening to this podcast, I think it's important to translate fractional odds to money line odds or American odds sometimes. 8-5 on journalism is plus 160. If I'm telling you this horse should be even money, if you were betting a team in a baseball game or a hockey game that am telling you is even money and that team is plus 160, that's a max bet, right? Like you're placing a humongous bet at an edge like that. We're saying there's a possibility he should be 4-5 or 3-5. I think even money is a fair price to put him at. 8-5 would be an absolute gift, but even money or better, I'm absolutely taking journalism to win and would put him on top of all of my tickets. Let's go through this field of 9, though, see what other horses we think might have a chance to beat journalism if he's not running his best 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby. I would say that's probably the most significant concern is the short turnaround. Only a couple of other horses coming back here from the Derby. But the number 1, we'll start with Goal Oriented. He, I think, is the biggest wild card in this race because he's extremely lightly raced. Didn't race at all as a 2-year-old, 6-1 on the morning line, trained by Bob Baffert, who's obviously had a ton of success in the Triple Crown and at Pimlico in particular. This will be one of the pace setters in the race, and he's also ridden by Flavien Prat. So going to be to the front from the rail, Very lightly raced, though, just his third lifetime start, as I said, has paired up 91 speed figures, though, 91 buyers in back-to-back starts. It seems like he should take a step forward off of that. How do you view the pace of this race, where goal-oriented will be in the early running? And then are you tossing him? Are you using him underneath? Or do you view him as a potential likely win contender alongside journalism?
Yeah, look, I think you mentioned it, Sean. Baffert's had ultimate success at the Preakness. He's won it 8 times. And interestingly enough, goal oriented kind of reminds me of another Baffert horse who won the Preakness a few years back in National Treasure. He is somebody goal oriented who I will be using. I think he's going to be forwardly placed, and frankly, Flavian's going to have to send out of the gate to get good position, being down on the rail. I'm not sure he's the fastest horse in the field. So I don't know if he would organically get the lead or if he's going to be forced to use some of that initial early speed to get to the lead. But for all of the reasons that you've mentioned, he's absolutely a horse that I'm going to be using. In all honesty, before I did my deep dive into the race, I actually thought that goal oriented, if I was going to choose someone to beat journalism, that it was going to be goal oriented. While that's not entirely the case anymore, I still do really like this horse in here. And clearly they thought a lot of the horse, even though he never ran it too, because he was Triple Crown nominated, right? You have to be Triple Crown nominated coming as a late 2-year-old. And so they thought a lot of this horse. They thought that he had a lot of talent. I think he's going to be forwardly placed in a race that I think there's a lot of pace questions in terms of who's going to get the lead in here. And again, you mentioned Flavien Prat. I would argue he's the best jockey in the world right now, and it probably has been for the last 12 or so months. He shows up on big days, wins big races. Baffert and Flavien 26% when they're paired up. So one that you have to use.
Only question regarding goal-oriented back for you is whether if Rodriguez were healthy, because this is the same connections as Rodriguez, if Rodriguez were healthy, Rodriguez the better horse, likely a better pace setter as well. Do you think they would have been running goal-oriented in this spot and putting those two head-to-head?
It's a really good question, and I thought a lot about that, frankly, because if Rodriguez was in this race, I would have had him very high on my board. And so, I think that's a great question, Sean. Um, and just given the fact that Rodriguez had already faced and beaten Stakes Company, I would have had Rodriguez ahead of goal oriented. I think they probably still would have run goal oriented in here because I think that they saw the talent from him. He just got a really late start, right? I mean, his first start was in April. Now, interestingly enough, we talk about, the 2-week turnaround for journalism. While it wasn't the Derby, it's still important to note that goal oriented is also coming in off that same 2-week break. He ran on Derby Day on the undercard in a not even in a stakes race. And so it's the same turnaround. And so the questions are the same from a rest period as they are for journalism for goal oriented.
Yeah, glad you pointed that out. 6-1 based off of the connections, Bob Baffert and Flavien Prat, not necessarily the speed scores and what he's done to date. First time against graded stakes competition on Saturday. The number 2 journalism, as I said, 8-5 on the morning line. The top 3 speed figures in the field, 102 in each of his past 2 races, 108 in the race prior. He handled the big field fine in the Derby. As I said, I think he should be even money, if not 4-5 or 3-5. And if this were the Derby field 2 weeks ago and we had not seen that Derby, he would be 3-5, clearly going into the race. 2 weeks rest, the only concern. Going to have him as my top win contender. Considering using him alongside other horses as Bs, depending upon what else I find in the pick 5, pick 4 sequences, how much I want to spread. There are 2 backups I'm interested in using this race, but he's clearly my top win contender. I would imagine he's yours as well.
Yeah, he's my top win contender. To your point, in terms of multi-race structure, I will say that there will be pick 4s and pick 5s that I single journalism in, and then there will be pick 4s and pick 5s that I use other horses in and spread a little bit deeper in this race, and not including journalism. But look, he's the most proven horse. To your point, he's got 3 triple-digit buyers. If he had beaten Sovereignty in the Derby, we would be talking about, morning line 3 or 4-5 at best. Because of that, we're getting good price. We've talked about it already. I don't think either one of us thinks that we're getting 8 to 5. If we do, that's an absolute dream. He's the most talented horse in the field. And I'll be honest, I don't know how much talent he's facing in this field in comparison to the Derby. And it's obviously less than half the size of the Derby field. So, a lot of things pointing in the direction. The question is, the 2 week turnaround. But there's a number of horses in this field that are also coming in off a 2 week turnaround. So, is that evening out the playing field a little bit more?
Number 3, American Promise, trained by D. Wayne Lucas. This horse is expected by the pace projector to be directly behind the number 1 goal oriented, up near the early read, but a little bit more tactically in behind him. Not sure he's as fast as goal oriented or the other pace setter that we'll get to in a little bit, but he has run 10 times. This is the most heavily raced horse in the race. It does seem like D. Wayne, who's getting a little bit up there in age, is just kind of throwing darts at the board, hoping he can hit the board in a big stakes race one more time. I'm against American Promise. I'm tossing him. Didn't really look like he ran particularly well in the Derby. What's your thoughts on using the number 3 here?
Yeah, I'm with you, Sean. He's a toss for me. The question is like, oh, was it the slop that he didn't like? Well, he's run on a sloppy track twice, both times finished way out of it. He ran on a muddy track once down at Oaklawn where he actually won. That was his maiden breaking score. At this point, when you have a 3-year-old this early in the 3-year-old season who already has 10 starts under his belt and he's coming back in 2 weeks, just not something that I love. And I don't think he's the fastest horse in this race. I know the pace projector has goal oriented. We'll talk about another horse later who I actually think is faster than goal oriented. That's going to be on the speed. And I don't think that if American Promise doesn't get the lead, I don't know as though that he's going to be able to pass horses. And so for me, he's a toss at a big price.
Yeah, it was crunched a little bit out of the starting gate, and the Derby didn't get the best trip, but just do not like his style or his talent necessarily for the race. And that's to say he does have a career high of a 95 Beyer speed figure, which is in the upper half of this field. As I mentioned, goal oriented. His career highs 91s in back-to-back races. Journalism has broken 100 a few times. A horse that we do not have pace data on, we do not have speed figures on, is the number 4 Heart of Honor, who recently lost to Admire Daytona in the UAE Derby. Admire Daytona did not run at all in the Kentucky Derby, did not look like he belonged in the field. Heart of Honor, the number 4, also a toss for me. There's horses I'd rather use underneath. What are your thoughts on them?
I'm the same way. We haven't seen, look, I have to kind of eat a little bit of my own words here. Like I was on Luxor Cafe. I don't know as though the Luxor got the best trip. Even if he got a great trip, was he going to win the Derby? I'm not sure. We've seen these horses now ship over from overseas, the last couple of years, some of them with a lot of hype behind them, and they just haven't run well in the American Triple Crown races. And so for a lot of those reasons, Heart of Honor is a toss for me as well.
Number 5, Pay Billy, the local horse winner of the Federico Tessio, paired up a 94 had an 85 in that race, which is a career best. So again, below 90, one of the lower scores in this field. Will I think be an overlay considering he's the local horse and the local horses tend to get bet in Pimlico. Local horses get bet everywhere. The Peter Pan winner always gets bet in the Belmont Stakes. But your thoughts on Pay Billy and whether you're using the 5 at 20 to 1. I think 20 to 1 is even too short for him. You could make him 50 to 1 or 99 to 1. I'm probably still not considering him. What about you?
I'm again in agreement with you. I think when you look at his Beyer speed figures, he's just a class below this field. Yes, he's a local horse. It would be a great story. It would be a lot of fun. That being said, I don't think that he has the talent to compete at this level. He's never run in a graded stakes competition. And even the horses that he's run against, a lot of them have not come back to win additional races afterwards, which is another thing that I look at when I'm looking at not only the class of the competition, but what have they done after? And Pay Billy, none of his rivals have come back to really win. So for a lot of reasons that you've mentioned and some of those, Sean, he's a toss for me as well.
3, 4, and 5 we've tossed from a 9-horse race using the other 6 in some ways, but 2 I'm relatively, going to save for trifectas that are shorter prices that I'm going against. Cost Me with Sovereignty in the Kentucky Derby. There's a horse I'm repeating that action against here in the Preakness. But before we get to him, the number 6 River Thames, maybe my most intriguing backup in this race. I really think he fits for a lot of reasons. He was beaten by East Avenue and Burnham Square in the Bluegrass, but Burnham Square, who I picked in the Derby, had probably the toughest trip of any horse in the Derby ultimately, and he lost by a neck to sovereignty, your Kentucky Derby winner in the Fountain of Youth. He's going to face other pace pressure up front with the 1, the 3, and the 8, which we'll get to eventually. But I think he'll be in that second flight of horses. If he can sit tactically and if he can get the distance, I think River Thames is uber talented and very capable of finishing in the exacta, if not winning the race at 9-2. So this might be my top underneath selection. There's another horse that we'll get to in a second that I'm kind of back and forth on. But River Thames, aside from journalism, I do view as a top win contender in this race. He's more of a B horse for me, but one I'm certainly using. What are your thoughts on River Thames, ridden by a Rat Ortiz?
Yeah, so I actually had a Derby future bet on River Thames from the beginning of this year. I think Derby pool number 2 or 3, I forget what it was now. So when they decided that they weren't going to run him in the Derby, I obviously was a little bit crushed inside, or my money was definitely lit on fire at that point. I've always thought very highly of this horse. I really like this horse. I went back. What I will say that I didn't love about his bluegrass, and I watched it multiple times, and I watched the head on, is he never got to East Avenue. And we saw East Avenue collapse from a pace perspective in the Derby, but he never passed East Avenue in that race. And he had every opportunity to. And so my question with him is he more of a one-paced horse? Like, he's not the deep closer, so he's not going to have a huge late kick, but does he have enough of a kick to go by late? I'm still pretty high on him. I'm not sold though that 9-2 is a good price on him. For me, I'd be, if his odds float up, 5-1, 6-1, somewhere in that range, gets a little bit more intriguing. I know that we're talking, minor details here. But I agree with you. He's a B. I will be using him, especially like I said, in, pick fours and pick fives that I'm not singling journalism. I will definitely be using the 6 River Thames. But there's another horse that we'll talk about shortly that I like even more.
Number 7 is, and before we move on, the number 6, River Thames, I just want to mention. So he had 94 and 95 speed scores in his last 2 races. Pairing those up seems like he could jump up from those two. It's a little bit encouraging, the speed scores. But the number 7, Sandman, has a career best of a 99 in the Arkansas Derby. This is the TikTok horse, the one who's drawn a lot of extra betting attention to both the Derby and likely the Preakness as well. That's why I thought he was an overlay in the Derby. I think he will be in the Preakness too. Do not like him at 4-1 as the deepest closer in the field and not the best closer in the field. So going to be behind journalism, getting second run on journalism, and not as fast as journalism either. Number 7, Sandman, not a toss for me. A horse I'll use third on trifectas likely, but probably not in the exacta. What are your thoughts on Sandman?
I agree. Look, I think from a horse racing fan perspective, it's great to see him run back because there is so much publicity notoriety with this horse going on, which I love, and it's great for the game and to expand the game to reach new people. From a betting perspective, 4-1 is a terrible price on him and not one that I would be considering. I'm not sure. We've talked a bunch about the pace in this race. I'm not sure that there's enough pace for Sandman to run into in this race. He is the deep closer. I mean, you look at his starts, in the Derby, he was 18 out of 19 at first call. He was 8 out of 9 in the Arkansas Derby at first call. He was 9 out of 13 in the Rebel at first call. He was 9 out of 9 in the Southwest Stakes at first call. So he's always going to be really far back, which means he needs pace to run into. Not sure he's going to get enough pace to run into. He does have that closing kick. It is interesting to me, too, to note that his jockey from the last 2 starts, Jose Ortiz, Irad's brother, who rode him both in the Kentucky Derby and the Arkansas Derby, jumps off of Sandman onto another horse, and we get Hall of Famer Johnny V on Sandman. But the fact that Jose is going elsewhere, and Jose is one of the hottest jockeys in 2025, having an absolutely amazing year, makes me think even less of Sandman in this spot.
And it'll upgrade probably for you the next horse in a second. Just want to get your thoughts on Johnny V riding Sandman. Does that make you think Sandman going to be a little bit more forward in this race? Is he even capable of running in that style, or is it just a pure one-run closer and the jockey doesn't necessarily matter?
I think it's more of the latter, Sean. I think he's a pure one-run closer. His maiden score at Saratoga, he, first call, again, though, he was 6 out of 7 horses. By second call, he was only 2.5 lengths off the pace. I still don't think that's what he's meant to do, what he wants to do. So I still think he's going to be the one run. I don't know as though that Johnny V aboard is going to put him in any bit of a different position.
Jose Ortiz jumping off of Sandman, jumping on the number 8. Clever again by speed figures. This is the biggest contender and the biggest threat to journalism in this race. Ran a 101 buyer in the Hot Springs on March 30th, went gate to wire. The only figure competitive with journalism. Forced by American Pharaoh, so we know he likes the distance. Know he will probably take well to the track as well. His speed scores, I believe, have improved in every single race too. So you just like to see that progression, and he may be the speed of the speed in here. Do you think Clever again is capable of getting to the front wiring this field?
I do, especially from his post position. And I went back and watched obviously all three of his starts. Again, another relatively lightly raced horse in this field. But you watch that Hot Springs stakes race, and he set pretty modest fractions. They weren't slow by any stretch of the imagination. And then Jose on the turn is looking under his arm, under his shoulder. One of the best feelings as a bettor when your jockey does that, because you know that that jockey believes he's got plenty of horse left for the stretch drive. And Jose did. I think maybe he hit the horse once with the whip, but he, opened up in the lane to end up winning by 4. I do think that this is the biggest threat to journalism in Clever again. I personally think that Clever again is going to have the lead. If he doesn't have the lead, by having the post position number 8, he's going to be able to sit just off of whoever goes to the lead to the inside of him and ideally sit a pretty perfect trip. And Jose will be able to use this horse as he needs to. I really like him in this spot. To your point, he's only improved on his buyer speed figures. He's making his 3rd start as a 3-year-old. You mentioned American Pharaoh. Dam sire was Galileo. Distance is no concern whatsoever. I really do like him in here. And at 5-1, I think you're getting a pretty fair price.
Is he an A for you on all tickets? Is he a B, with journalism more so keyed, or you're using him everywhere?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Sean. Like when I started putting together bets, I was trying to go back and forth. Do I put him as an A alongside of journalism, or do I put journalism as the sole A and then, have goal-oriented River Thames and Clever again as my Bs? And that's the direction that I ended up going as a B. I still sit here and I wonder, should he be an A? I really do like Clever again. But again, to me, journalism is by far and away the most talented and most proven horse in this race. The difference here is that Clever again has had that proper spacing in between races. So is it a spacing issue for journalism and coming back on short rest, which gives Clever again the leg up on journalism? Maybe. But again, journalism to me is by far and away the most talented horse in this field. And so that's why he would be the lone A. Clever again would be a B.
I think we have the same issue, which is we both view journalism as a very good value bet at 8-5. But handicapping this race, I kind of fell in love with Clever again. And I kind of fell in love with River Thames a little bit. And I was like, I almost wish journalism wasn't in here so that there was another horse that was a favorite that I was like targeting against so I could bet these horses instead. Yeah, Clever again. Just the more I handicap these horses, the 6 and the 8 kept popping up as horses I wanted to find to get in the money. We'll see if they can end up running journalism down. But one horse who I actually am interested in at longer odds is the number 9 Gosger at 20-1, purely because if you're going to compare Sandman at 4-1 and Gosger at 20-1, and Gosger is going to be getting first run on Sandman if there is any pace in here. He closed really strong in the Grade 3 Lexington. I think Gosger at 20-1 could end up juicing up superfecta tickets, trifecta tickets. Is he a horse you're going to consider using underneath?
I would use him underneath in vertical wagers, so in exactas and
Mm-hmm.
trifectas, superfectas. I would not use him in multi-race wagers. And I actually do think, Sean, that his price is also going to come down, which could drive up the prices of some of the others that we've talked about in here. I agree with you. 20-1, opposite of what you said about Pay Billy, who probably should be closer to like 40 or 50-1 in here. Gosker in here, I don't think he should be above like 12-1, frankly. So I do think that we're going to see that price come down on Gosker. He's an interesting horse for sure. He definitely has significant improvement from a buyer speed figure standpoint to be competitive in this field, which is probably why his morning line odds were set at which they were. And again, it's interesting to me to always see when jockeys jump around. In Goskar's three career starts, he's had three different jockeys, and now he's about to have his fourth career start with a fourth different jockey because Irad Ortiz sticks with the Todd Pletcher trainee of River Thames. Not that there's anything wrong with Luis. Luis is a great jock in his own right. It just always begs the question, why do jocks decide to move around? Yes, there's some connections at play with River Thames for Irad. But if he felt like Oscar gave him the best chance to win, he would have stayed here. So that's another aspect for me where I lean a little bit further against Oscar in this spot.
Horses we're tossing: the 3 American Promise, the 4 Heart of Honor, the 5 Pay Billy. Our top win contenders, the number 2 Journalism. And then a break for me, the B's are River Thames and Clever Again. Mike would also include the number 1 Goal Oriented in there as well. He's more of a C for me. I doubt I'll end up using him. I certainly respect him. I won't be surprised if he wins. I just think, given the Baffert connections, he'll be a little bit overbet on Saturday. Mike, let's help the people build out some exacta, trifecta, super tickets. If you want my exacta, going to be pretty simple. The number 2 Journalism over the number 6 River Thames and the number 8 Clever Again. I'll probably reverse those and play it for a smaller amount in the event that one of the longer shot wins. I'll probably play a 6-8 exacta as well too, in case Journalism does not run well 2 weeks off the layoff and ends up falling back. And then my trifecta is going to be built out very similarly. The 2 over the 6 and 8 over the 6 and 8. The 2, or that's the more simplistic one, just using the exacta horses. If you want to expand it out a little bit, which I probably will, would single the number 2 Journalism on top, use the number 6 River Thames, the number 8 Clever Again, and the number 9 Gosgar in second, and then would include the 1 and the 7 Goal Oriented and Sandman on the third line. So 2 over 6, 8, 9 over 1, 6, 7, 8, 9 would be how I'd build out a trifecta with Journalism on top. And you could reverse, as I said, that first and second line with the 6 and the 8 potentially winning, Journalism finishing in second if you're looking for more of a price. Mike, I would imagine we're building out tickets somewhat similarly, considering we have very similar thoughts on these horses. How narrow are you keeping your trifectas and your exactas, and which horses are you using where?
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little old school with my exacta and just play a straight exacta. I'm going 2 Journalism over 8 Clever Again. That's gonna be my straight exacta. Try to extract as much value out of my exacta as I possibly can. And then when I go to the trifecta, gonna play it 2 different ways, but similar idea as the exacta. I'm gonna play just the 2 Journalism over the 8 Clever Again. And then in the third position, I will use the 1 Goal Oriented, the 6 River Thames, the 7 Sandman, and the 9 Gosgar. So that'll be the trifecta that I play for a higher dollar amount, because by having one horse in first and one horse in second, I'm just paying whatever the base bet amount is times my 4 horses in third. As an example, if I played a $10 trifecta, it would cost me $40 in that instance. I will then play a, saver trifecta, if you will, where it has Journalism on top and then all of the other horses that I like in second and third. So I would have Journalism on top of Goal Oriented, the 1, on top of the 6 River Thames, on top of Clever Again, the 8 in second. And then in third, I would use those same 3, 1 Goal Oriented, 6 River Thames. I would then also include Sandman, the 7, 8 Clever Again in third, and then finally 9 Gosgar in third position as well.
It's very similar structure and can have similar opinions and ended up on completely different structures, but we have somewhat similar structuring there. I should actually just mention this on the pod. If you bet horses regularly, you're looking for something to help your thought process. I used to spend hours just like staring at my notes and staring at sheets and figuring out like what horses I wanted to piece together. I started incorporating AI into like my thought process and trying to put my thought process on paper essentially with AI and having it like tell me where my strongest opinions were and where the connections were in the race days. Super efficient and incredibly helpful in terms of like structuring bets, planning out my betting for a day. Incredibly helpful. A use case I wasn't expecting to find with AI. So just wanted to shout that out there in case anybody's looking for a way to maybe make their handicapping process more efficient. It actually like took my brain and kind of put it on paper and into a model. Let's talk about the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes on Friday, race 13 on Friday at 5:54 p.m. Eastern. Fast pace projection for this race, a field of 9. The favorite, the number 4 running and gunning for Steve Asmussen, 5-2 on the morning line. The number 3 Margie's Intention for Brad Cox is 3-1. Conti, do you agree that this is a fast pace for this race? I'm planning on playing the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double. We talked about journalism being a very easy single, potentially on the other end of that double. So if you're going to play the Black Eyed Susan, how many horses do you view in this field as top win contenders? I have 3 that I plan on talking about. And then what other horses do you like using underneath? Feel free to break down this race in whatever direction you'd like, but please comment on the pace to begin with.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there will be decent pace in here. I'm not sold that it's going to be as hot as it's projected from time form, and I love the time form pace projection. Um, and so I looked at this race a couple of different ways. To be honest, the top two, based on morning line odds, who you mentioned, the 3 Margie's Intention at 3-1, and then the morning line favorite, number 4, Running and Gunning at 5-2. They're both B's for me for
Mm-hmm.
different reasons. The 3 Margie's Intention coming out of all state bred races at fairgrounds. So Louisiana bred, we don't see very many top tier Louisiana breds. It's nothing against their breeding program. They have a great program. But, this is a massive step up for her in terms of class. She's never run against graded stakes competition, and she's never run against open company either. If she had beaten open company at some point in her life, sure. But her last 2 races, she wasn't even able to beat state bred company. The other big question that I have for her, a little bit less of a question because it's Brad Cox. I'm never the biggest fan when a horse is running off Lasix for the first time, just because you don't know how the horse is going to react. And she's coming off Lasix for the first time. Again, it's a Brad Cox trainee, which upgrades her some in my book. She's still a B. And then for running and gunning, I just not super impressive to me. She ran third in the fantasy stakes, but was really far back, 9.5 lengths in third. The top 2 blew out that field. She's got wins at Indiana, at Sam Houston, and at Sunland Park. Just not the toughest of competition that she's running against. And 5-2 is far too short for me. So again, not going to let her beat me, but not top competition for me. My top 2 selections in here, my top selection is actually the number 7. And she's coming in. I mean, look, she's 8-1 on the morning line. Trainer Brittany Russell, who is a local legend down in the Baltimore, Maryland area, she's winning 31% of her races because she's typically around these smaller tracks, but she's a phenomenal horse person. And getting Irad Ortiz, which to me is really interesting. This is also a Mike Rapoli horse. For those that have watched Race for the Crown on Netflix, Rapoli is one of the featured owners. He's a prominent owner. Also by Curlin. So Curlin is the father of this horse. Curlin obviously has produced many a Triple Crown winner. They paid, Rapoli paid a pretty penny for her. And frankly, while she ran against local horses at Laurel last time out in open stakes competition, she ran second, but just missed and took a pretty good bump at the 16th pole and was still able to get herself upright and re-rally. I really liked her, and I think with a clean trip and being more towards the outside with IRAD, she should get a cleaner trip in here. And if the pace is as hot as expected, she would love to close into a fast pace. So I was really high on the number 7 replay. And then I also liked the number 1, Liam in the Dust, 6-1, a Rudolph Brissett horse who, I'll be honest, 2 back threw up just a massive clunker and made me feel like, oh boy, is this really the horse, to go on. In that race, she was the post-time favorite at 5-2, but that was her first start as a 3-year-old, first start in 3 months. It clearly didn't run very well, especially coming for home. But I'm okay. She came back, ran a really good second at Keeneland over the slop. I think if she continues to progress and continues to mature, and she's going to be one that's closer to the pace in here. So if the pace isn't as hot as is expected, she could sit just off that pace and really get first run, at those pace horses, get first jump on those closers at a really good price at 6-1. So those are going to be my top two selections in the Black Eyed Susan.
Yeah, of the first two you mentioned, the three and the four, I'm actually more so against the number four, the morning line favorite, running and gunning. I will be using the number three, Marcy's Intention. Brad Cox has been dominant after claiming horses, a 40% win rate, essentially, first time in his barn. I don't know how many of that 40% is with removed Lasix, so that's definitely a point to keep in mind, probably why it's more of a B horse for me. I really like the number six, Paris Lily, probably is my top selection. Actually beat Liam in the Dust in the slop in their last race, ahead of that horse every step of the way. It should be raining throughout most of the week down at Pimlico this week. And on Friday, it looks like the forecast will stop on Saturday morning before the Preakness Stakes. So the track may dry out before the Preakness. I'm expecting it to be a little bit softer for the Black Eyed Susan on Friday. Would definitely upgrade the number six Paris Lily if that were the case. And then the number eight, Amarth, if that is a fast pace as we're expecting, I think Amarth is sitting in great position in the second flight of horses. A little bit worried about the distance, but I do think it's one of the more talented horses in the race. So the three, the six, and the eight, I'll be playing into the number two journalism in the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double. May consider using my B horses in the Preakness as well. Conti, I don't believe you have any other undercard selections for Friday. As I said, rain in the forecast kind of skews things. Not the most exciting races to begin with either, but I do like the card on Saturday. The Grade 3 Maryland Sprint, race 4, a race I really enjoy watching. Race 9, the Jim McKay Turf Sprint, the 5 furlong sprint, one of my favorite races to watch every year. Just 5 furlong turf sprints. I don't think I breathe the entire time that race is running when I have a pick four, or pick five ticket on it. It's literally a hold your breath moment. They're so much fun to watch. So do you have bets on any of those races? If not, totally fine. But any thoughts on any of the undercard races for Saturday before we get to the Preakness Stakes?
Yeah, so I agree with you, Sean. Race 9, the turf sprint, it's every year. This is one of my favorite races on Preakness weekend, if I'm being totally honest. And look, I think there's a very logical favorite in number 2, No Nay Never, at 5-2. Really strong buyer speed figures. The horse has run against, top quality competition, is graded stakes placed. I actually went a little bit further to the outside, a little bit more of a local horse, a horse that ran in this race last year, who was 7-2 in this race last year and finished a length and a half away from winning in second place. And that's the number 4, Witty. And not only that, significant jockey upgrade to Flavian Pratt. Now, Witty is going to need a pace to run into. He is absolutely the closer in this race. Flavian always puts his horses in a position to win. And if you're telling me that we're getting 10-1, absolutely going to use. But my best bet of the weekend, Sean, is going to be in the 11th race of the day. And it's going to be number 7, Regan's Wit. Horses 5-2 on the morning line. Maybe not the greatest of prices, 2.5-1. So, you're talking in terms of sports betting, that's plus 250. I mean, if you're telling me that I'm going to get plus 250 on one of my best bets of the weekend, I am backing up the Brinks truck. This horse I absolutely love. Jose and Cherie DeVoe, when they team up, winning at a really high clip. Horse ran against some horses that ran on Derby Day, finishing in 4th in the Transylvania Stakes last time out. That was on a good Keeneland turf course. And even if there's moisture, this turf course is different than the Keeneland turf course. The Keeneland turf course is a sand-based turf course. Some horses like it, some others don't. So unknown if the good condition was the issue, or if it was more of that surface of that sand base. But this horse ran second by a neck to Zulu Kingdom, who I absolutely loved on Derby Day and who won in very easy fashion. If Regan's Wit is able to run back to a race like that, he easily wins this race. And all of my bets on Saturday will be going through number 7, Regan's Wit, in race 11.
Hopefully that's a single to help you shorten up your late pick 4 and pick 5 sequences. One I'll certainly be considering strongly. I haven't dove into those races as deeply yet. I looked at the Jim McKay Turf Sprint field for quite a bit, just getting excited about the race, not being able to pick a winner ultimately. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the sprint races on Saturday and obviously the Black-Eyed Susan and the Preakness Stakes this weekend. If you're looking for the NFL schedule release, it'll be right here on the Action Network podcast next week. But thank you for tuning in to our 2025 Preakness Stakes and Black-Eyed Susan Stakes preview. To Michael Conti, for Mike Conti, I'm Sean Zerillo. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you back here in a few weeks to talk about the Vermont Stakes.